Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? So this week a topic has come up and I oftentimes hear about it, and that is when people are wanting to add more plant-based foods, or they're wanting to move to a more plant-based diet. So it's not necessarily wanting to transition completely over to being plant-based, but we're starting to hear that obviously having more plant-based foods in our diet is a lot healthier for us. So if you have ever thought about going more plant-based but didn't know where to start, then this segment is for you. I'm going to help you to explore what that shift might look like on your plate, but also to unpack some myths around what going plant-based actually. So it's pretty obvious in terms of what it sounds like or what we should be doing. But the reality is, when I think about going more plant-based, is what people generally tell me, is it's not necessarily getting rid of all meat or animal products completely, but it's moving more in that direction. And if we start to think about it, well, when I think about my diet, would I call myself plant-based? I probably would. I definitely eat some forms of meat. I add in dairy. But when I think about my typical day of food, majority and the ratio of plant to animals is a lot higher in plant-based foods rather than in animal-based foods. So I think thinking of it in that way and going, well, okay, well, I'm having breakfast here. What component of my breakfast is coming from plant-based sources, and how can I increase the concentration of plant-based sources on my plate rather than completely turning it into a vegan meal, for example? So I think that's a really good way to move into more plant-based. So there's lots of reason why you would choose to add more plants into your diet. Better health, definitely. Plant-based foods are packed with vitamins, minerals, good fibre, and antioxidants that support your health, your digestion, and your overall well-being. Also, gut health. More plants mean more fibre, which feeds your gut bacteria and helps to keep everything running really smoothly. Also, my big thing is eating more plants is good for the planet. It uses less water and land compared to animal-based foods. And when I make my food choices, I do make this consideration for the planet. It's not just about what's good for me and my health, but generally. So that's pretty important to me. But also energy and mood. Many people find that by having more energy, which does come from eating a wider variety of fruits, veggies, nuts and seeds, then you do have more energy in your day and you do feel better. So when we hear about plant-based, a lot of the times we might picture eating tofu and lentils and mung beans, and all of those are great options. But plant-based eating is a lot broader than just those particular type of foods, or eating quinoa and all the other things that we tend to think about. But basically for me, it means filling your plate with more foods that come from plants, such as vegetables, it could be fruits. And the other thing is, when we're talking plant-based, it could be nuts, it could be seeds, it can be the legumes, but it also is whole grains, as well as tofu products, soybean products. They're all the ways that we can increase the plant-based sources of foods in our diet. And if you're looking at your diet right now, you might already notice that you're probably eating a lot of plant-based foods already. So if you are having a morning snack of a piece of fruit and some nuts, well, that's purely plant-based. And so just thinking about how we can make that change. So it needs to be gradual, and we can make some small sustainable changes building on what we're already doing. So unless you are trying to make that distinct change to purely plant-based or vegan or vegetarian style of eating. But this segment's more about how do we just increase the amount of plant-based foods in our diet. So the first thing that I would recommend is to start to add certain things in rather than subtracting. So start by adding more plant-based options to your meals rather than cutting things out. Because the other thing is that moving to a plant-based style of eating is also about redesigning what's in your pantry and what's in your fridge and on your shelves, because you're going to need different styles of ingredients. The cooking methods change, the recipes change, and this does take time. So moving completely into a plant-based diet, if you've been including meat in your cooking all your life, it can be quite a transition where you may need, as I said, to get new ingredients. You might need new skills, some new recipes to be able to integrate more of a plant-based approach. And when we are moving into plant-based, I think it's really important to take a responsible view on that, because a lot of the times we can, if we are wanting to move more towards plant-based, we can stick to more just adding limited range of nutrients that come from certain plant-based foods that we actually enjoy, rather than getting a huge variety and the right combination of legumes and green beans and nuts and seeds that we would need to make sure that we're getting all the nutrients that we need. So start by adding more plant-based options. So the half and half approach, replacing half of the meat in your favourite recipe with some sort of legumes, whether that be lentils or chickpeas or beans. So a simple way to think of that is when you are making bolognese, take out half the bolognese and put in some lentils, a can of lentils, or keep the same quantity of meat, but just increase that with a couple of cans of lentils. So then you're making, rather than one serving, you've got the two servings. I always do, if we're going to make a taco sauce with a mince, we're always putting in some red kidney beans, and I've been finding that I'm putting more red kidney beans and less of the mince these days. But you can do that in patties as well. Lots of different ways where you can put in half of the meat in your favourite recipes. And even things like chicken salads or chicken stir fries, I tend to combine a chicken stir fry with some tofu, or I put some chicken curry, for example. There will always definitely be some chickpeas in there, and that just sort of bulks up the dish with the vegetables there. Think about making some easy, smart swaps, so swapping out dairy or your meat-based snacks for nuts and seeds and fresh veggie sticks and hummus, that sort of thing. So that's a really good way. Snacks definitely aim to include some fruit or veggies and nuts and seeds. They're a really good way and a good time of the day to get in some plant-based foods. But then also just think about making one meal a day plant-based. So you might go breakfast with some overnight oats with fruit and nuts and seeds, and instead of using dairy, you could use a plant-based milk such as almond milk, or if you're making a smoothie, you can add some greens in there. And rather than using a whey-based protein powder, you can use the plant-based protein powder. Or doing lunch, you could do some sort of a veggie burger, or you could do a bean mix salad, or quinoa mixed in with beans and lentils, or some sort of a plant-based curry as well. And so I think that's one thing that we definitely do a lot of, is if I've made the family for lunch some sort of a meat-based dish, then I tend to swap it out and do a lighter dinner and more of a plant-based dinner. So we definitely don't eat meat every single night. Sometimes, well, now that my boys are getting older and bigger, and there's more complaints about not having the meat, but definitely we are getting maybe 2 or 3 nights, maybe even more sometimes, of plant-based dinners as well. So the other thing that you can do is just to swap out some plant-based versions. So swapping dairy milk for almond milk, using lentils or mushrooms instead of meat completely for some of your pasta sauces or your curries or tacos. That all works really, really well. Like, it is completely fine to have a kidney bean taco sauce with lots of veggies in it. It is absolutely delicious. So, and just keeping it simple. You don't always need to create really fancy, elaborate plant-based version of any of your meals. You can just roast a tray of vegetables for the week and have that alongside of things, or make sure that you have salad with every single meal. I was just chatting to a member just last night, and we were talking about making sure that even when you're having a spaghetti bolognese, that you're putting some salad with that, or you're putting some greens with that. And when we increase the vegetables in our dish, we're inevitably going to reduce the amount of meat or carbohydrate that we are having. So we're getting more fibre and more nutritional value and adding more plants into our diet. So the thing is that as you go, just making sure that you are taking small steps to make these changes, because it can take a bit of time to start to get a taste for the ingredients, start to know how to cook these ingredients, and start to find some new recipes and get these ingredients into your home. So give yourself some permission to try things and really dislike them, but gradually over time with some of those tips, you can transition more into a higher concentration of plant-based foods into your week. And I cannot encourage you enough because of the importance of the health benefits of doing something like that. Now, remembering every little change adds up to big benefits for your health, your gut, and for the planet. So try this week just swapping out one meal or a snack for a plant-based option, and you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get those extra plants in. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful, and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.